It all started on an ordinary Tuesday evening. I had just finished a long day at work and was finally unwinding at home. My husband, Jake, was still at the office, staying late for a project that seemed to about stretch endlessly. As I sat on the couch, scrolling through my phone, I couldn't help but feel a little bored. To pass the time, I decided to send a flirty message to my boss, Ryan. We had developed a playful rapport at work over the past few months, often exchanging lighthearted banter. I had never intended for things to go too far. It was all just harmless fun. But as the evening wore on, emboldened by the dim light of the living room and the thrill of our exchanges, I snapped a few selfies. In a moment of poor judgment, I sent Ryan one of my more risque pictures. Nothing too explicit, but definitely suggestive. I didn't think much of it. After all, it was just a picture among friends. Or so we rationalized. I heard the sound of keys in the lock, and my heart raced as I quickly put my phone down, thinking nothing of it. Jake walked in, looking exhausted but still managing a smile. He noticed something was off and asked, "What's up? You look a little flustered." I brushed it off, joking that I was just scrolling through social media. Little did I know that the night was about to take a turn I never could have predicted. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed. It was Ryan, and I instinctively picked it up to read his response. "Wow, stunning. You really know how to make a guy's day." My cheeks flushed, and a part of me felt a rush of excitement. But just as quickly, I felt a wave of guilt wash over me. This wasn't how I wanted to treat my marriage, but the thrill of being desired by someone else was intoxicating. Jake, who had been getting settled, glanced over at me. "Who's that?" he asked, his tone casual but curious. I froze, trying to think of a plausible excuse. "Oh, just a group chat from work," I stammered, hoping my vague answer would suffice. His brows furrowed as he picked up on my hesitation. "You're acting weird. What's really going on?" I could sense the tension in the air, but I wasn't ready to come clean. Instead, I laughed it off and said, "Just work stuff. You know how it is." As the evening progressed, Jake continued to glance at me suspiciously. It wasn't until I heard my phone buzz again that everything changed. I had received a series of texts from Ryan, which I didn't bother to hide. Just as I was about to respond, Jake leaned over and saw the screen. His expression shifted from confusion to disbelief, then to anger. "Is this what I think it is?" he demanded, his voice low and steady. I felt the ground beneath me tremble as reality set in. "Jake, I can explain," but he cut me off, his face flushed with rage. "You're sending nude pictures to your boss? What kind of relationship is this?" His voice escalated, shaking with betrayal. I felt my heart drop. I had never meant for it to come to this. In the heat of the moment, I tried to justify my actions. It was just a joke. It didn't mean anything, I swear. But my words fell flat as the gravity of my mistake sank in. Jake wasn't listening. He was too hurt and angry to hear my explanations. "I can't believe you would do something so reckless. I thought we had a strong marriage, and now this." The disappointment in his voice cut deep. I desperately tried to reach him, to make him see how foolish and impulsive I had been. "It was a stupid mistake. I never meant to hurt you. It was just a silly picture." But the more I pleaded, the more he withdrew. Jake stormed out of the room, leaving me alone with my thoughts and the cold realization of what I had done. I sat in silence, grappling with my feelings of guilt and regret. How had I let things escalate to this point? I knew I had crossed a line, but I never thought it would lead to this. A fracture in our once solid relationship. As the days went by, the tension in our home grew unbearable. Jake was distant, barely speaking to me. I tried to apologize repeatedly, but each time I did, he would shut down, avoiding any discussion of the incident. I could see the hurt etched on his face, and it broke my heart. I had never intended to hurt him, but it seemed my actions had irrevocably changed our dynamic. One night, after a particularly silent dinner, Jake finally sat down with me. "We need to talk," he said, his voice calmed but firm. My heart raced, and I braced myself for what was to come. I can't keep pretending like everything is okay. To sending that picture, it shattered my trust. "I don't think I can move past this," he confessed, his eyes filled with pain. I felt the tears prickling at the corners of my eyes. I couldn't lose him, not over a moment of poor judgment. "Please, Jake, I love you. I'll do anything to make this right. Just give me a chance to prove that it was a mistake," I begged, my voice breaking. But he shook his head, his expression resolute. "I don't think I can do that. The image of you sending those pictures to him, it's burned into my mind. I just can't get past it. I'm sorry, but I think it's best if we separate," he said. his voice steady but heavy with. My heart shattered into a million pieces as the finality of his words sunk in. I never imagined that a single mistake could lead to the end of my marriage. We both sat in silence, the weight of what was happening suffocating. As the weeks turned into months, the separation became official. Jake moved out, and I was left alone in the home we had built together. I spent countless nights replaying that moment in my mind, wishing I could go back and change everything. The loneliness and regret consumed me. I missed the life we had shared, the laughter and love that had once filled our home. In the aftermath, I learned a hard lesson about trust and the fragility of relationships. I found myself seeking therapy to process my emotions and understand the gravity of my actions. It was a painful journey, but I knew I needed to heal. Through therapy, I began to understand that my mistakes stemmed from deeper insecurities within myself. I had sought validation outside my marriage, and in doing so, I had jeopardized the one thing I cherished the most, my relationship with Jake. I spent months working on myself, learning to rebuild my self-esteem and recognize the value of true commitment. As time passed, I slowly began to move forward. I realized that I had to accept the consequences of my actions, no matter how painful they were. Jake and I eventually found a way to communicate again, though it was never the same. We shared a mutual understanding that our paths had diverged, and while we would always care for each other, we could never go back to what we once had. Reflecting on that fateful night, I understood that one moment of poor judgment had changed everything. It taught me the importance of trust, communication, and the need to honor the commitments we make. I vowed to carry those lessons with me as I navigated the next chapters of my life. In the end, I learned that healing takes time, and sometimes the hardest lessons lead to the most profound growth. I was determined to emerge from this experience stronger and wiser, ready to embrace whatever the future held for me.